Well, we continue our Hall of Fame inductions in the athlete category with a para team from right here in British Columbia. We were not so much known for para skating, but in that era, or there was an era, when the two-time Canadian champions came from BC, born, raised, and trained right here, Betty and John McKilligan.
However, in those days, there were no para coaches in our province. And this is a story of how, if you want something badly enough, you figure out a way to make those dreams come true despite any roadblocks.
So let's go back in time and follow the journey of Betty and John McKilligan. Well, John was just 3 years old, and the McKilligan family was living outside of Victoria in the Gordon Head area at the time, and Mr. McKilligan, Art McKilligan as we knew him, would take young John and load up his car with a number of young boys to go to the Victoria Memorial Arena for public skating, and there it is, that old dome.
A year or so later, Mr. McKilligan started a hockey team of these youngsters, and although they did not have much access to the ice, they got involved in a league, and as John tells us, by Christmas they firmly owned last place, actually each season.
But however, by the end of the season, there was always significant improvement. And while all this was happening, young Betty was going to the rink to watch, and one day she was wandering down the hallways and came across a door that said, Figure Skating Club. And Betty said that she had imagined this whole new world behind this door, but never opened it, only to find out later it was a change room.
At 10, John was asked by a skating school if he wanted to keep skating while hockey was over, and John said, yeah, well, of course I do. The only problem was that in order to do those skating lessons, he had to wear figure skates.
Well, apparently, toe picks and John, well, they were John's nemesis, really. And after many falls and having water on his knees and having to have that drained, they decided to shave off the picks, or at least most of the picks. And of course, at this point, John only saw this part for helping his hockey.
Betty and John's aunt and uncle were caretakers at Beacon Hill Park, and when they visited an arena and saw some ice dancers, their uncle suggested they try ice dancing. John replied, there is no way I'm touching my sister.
Now, what I'm about to tell you is absolutely true because this is what they told me, so it's a little bit unbelievable, but I believe it. I really do. They told it in an interview.
You can't make this up.
And I have you can't make this stuff up. Okay, this is good. So, after hearing John's comment about not touching his sister Betty, John's uncle was a wily old character and said, well, John, listen, took him aside. He said, I have a pigeon with a broken wing, and if you skate once around the rink with Betty holding her hand, I will give you that pigeon. Honest to God, I'm not kidding. So needless to say, John had a major decision to make, and he quickly became the proud owner of a one-wing pigeon. And so the pairing of brother and sister, it started.
Oh, dear. Soon after the family moved to Nanaimo, skating at the Memorial Arena where John continued hockey and dance and pairs with Sister Betty. It was not an easy time for John as the journey to and from school often resulted in severe bullying. But John persevered.
It was the times. And I asked Betty and John, was there a defining moment or event that inspired them to really pursue competitive figure skating? And they said, well, it was in December 1963, and we were on a BC ferry ride from Nanaimo to Horseshoe Bay. Where's that ferry? There it is, that old ferry. And they were with their parents, and Father Art McKilligan went to buy a province newspaper.
And when he came back, there was a picture of Joni Graham and Don Phillips, BC Hall of Fame inductees from 3 years ago, on the front page as they had just qualified for the 1964 Winter Olympic Games. It was from that point on that the family together planned the goal and journey to the Olympic Games of 1968.
Pretty defining moment for the family, of course, and for these young skaters at the time. Well, first was a move to Vancouver and the North Shore Winter Club. And when they moved and started skating, it was with Eddie Rada, another Hall of Fame member here in BC, who became their coach. Well, no one had really taught pair skating so much, so together they studied pictures and got the support of their coaches and parents in discovering how to skate pairs.
It was in 1964 that Betty and John began to make their mark by winning the bronze medal in junior pairs. Being out west with not so many other pair teams allowed or forced Betty, John, and their coaches to take a fresh and new approach to pair skating. They wanted to be, and they were, innovators.
They added such things in an overhead lift as the kick of Betty's leg over John's head on the dismount. They added to the pair spin a stop of rotation, pulling away, pulling back together into another part of the spin. And this was completely unique at the time and soon after became part of every team's repertoire.
Soon after that, they went on to win the senior national championships in 67 and 68. Here is a photo of them competing at the 68 Canadian Championships in the Kerrisdale Arena as they took their second title and booked their ticket to the Winter Olympics in Grenoble, France. Pretty cool.
A province newspaper image, a ferry ride from Nanaimo to Horseshoe Bay, a mother and father completely dedicated to supporting their children's dream, young people with a vision, innovation, determination, and work ethic, resulting in this picture, the 1968 Winter Olympic figure skating team, along with fellow BC skaters Jay Humphrey, Steve Hutchison, and Karen Magnuson. Mission accomplished.
Wow. It is remarkable how one's journey in life takes shape. What a story and what an accomplishment. It is now our great pleasure to welcome into the Skate Canada BC Hall of Fame Betty and John McKilligan.
Thank you so much, Betty and John.